Hello, thank you for watching UATV. I'm Antosha from our studios in Kyiv, Ukraine. Our top stories this hour. A deadly explosion hits the St. Petersburg subway. At least 10 people have reportedly been killed. We have the latest. Poland accuses Russian air traffic controllers over the Smolensk plane crash. And Ukraine receives a high rating in the UN's Human Development Index. We have a full report coming up. A developing story this hour. An explosion in the St. Petersburg subway system has killed at least 10 people and injured more than 50. That's according to the Russian authorities. Now, here is one of the amateur videos from the scene supplied via the Reuters news agency. You can see dozens of ambulances have been on the scene. An air ambulance has also landed outside the station to take the most severely injured away. Okay, so this is what has been reported so far. The blast ripped through 2 train carriages. The Interfax news agency quotes an unidentified source as saying one of the blasts was caused by a bomb filled with shrapnel. That hasn't been confirmed by the authorities. Shortly after the explosion, all metro stations in St. Petersburg were closed. So here's a picture from the scene. Let's take a look now. This picture was posted by Russia's TV Dozhd. As you can see, the metal doors have been fully blown out by the force of the blast. In Russia, the doors are secured both at the top and at the bottom. This is just one of the photos posted online. Some are too graphic to show. Russian President Vladimir Putin has made a statement following the explosions on the St. Petersburg metro. He spoke a short time ago during a meeting with the president of Belarus. Let's take a listen.
Recently, there was an explosion in the St. Petersburg metro. There are fatalities and casualties, and at the beginning of this meeting, I want to express my deepest condolences and sympathies for the relatives, victims, and fatalities. I've already spoken to the head of the Special Service and the FSB director. Law enforcement and special services are working and will do everything to discover the reasons for this event and provide a full report of everything that happened. City authorities, if needed, can rely on all necessary federal support for our citizens who are victims and casualties.
We'll have more on this story as we get it. Now on to today's other news. The final vote on the Ukraine-EU visa waiver is set to take place on Thursday, April 6th. If ratified, the deal would allow Ukrainian citizens with a biometric passport to travel to EU without a visa. The visa-free regime will mark a major milestone in post-Maidan Ukraine, and it will be put to good use. According to the EU, nearly 10% of the 13.9 million short-stay visas issued in 2016 were given to Ukrainians. As a reminder, the text of Ukraine's visa waiver has already been formally agreed upon the Council and will likely begin in June. The National Bank of Ukraine says that reports that central bank head Valeria Gontareva has submitted a letter of resignation are not true. Valeria Gontareva confirmed information about her possible resignation in early March. She said that the official announcement would come a month before her resignation. She was appointed chief banker after the Ukrainian parliament had supported Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko's motion on June 19, 2014, to dismiss the then central bank governor Stepan Kubiv. In keeping with the Ukrainian constitution, the NBU governor shall be appointed by the parliament upon recommendation by the president for a period of 7 years. Russian hybrid forces continue sporadic attacks against Ukrainian positions on the front line in Donbass, despite an agreement for a full truce over the Easter holidays. In total, Ukrainian positions were targeted several dozen times, mostly near Mariupol and Donetsk. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko has spoken with his German and French counterparts, Angela Merkel and François Hollande. According to the Ukrainian presidential administration, the 3 leaders spoke about the current situation in Donbass, the release of hostages, and further steps to fully implement the Minsk agreement. The statement also says Poroshenko thanked Merkel and Hollande for their support of Ukraine's visa-free bid with the Europe's Schengen zone. Polish prosecutors released a new analysis of evidence into the 2010 plane crash in Russia that killed President Lech Kaczynski and a number of Polish state leaders. The document states that 2 Russian air traffic controllers and a third person in the control tower willingly contributed to the disaster. Poland's national prosecutor says there is, quote, no doubt that one of the causes of the crash was the behavior of those in the control tower. In other words, someone, quote, deliberately caused a catastrophe. The Polish side announced that they are willing to question 3 Russian citizens, but will not release the details on their identities for now. The devastating plane crash that occurred on April 10, 2010, killed President Lech Kaczynski and 95 other, many of them top Polish state and military leaders. Up to this day, Russia denies all the allegations. Russia has the capacity to launch an attack in the Baltic states with as little as 24 hours' notice. This is according to the head of Lithuania's military counterintelligence service. According to him, this is a, quote, signal to NATO to improve its military response time. The comments come at a time when NATO is already bolstering its eastern flank, including in the Baltic countries, Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania. The military alliance decided to move military equipment, as many as 4,000 troops to the region in hopes of deterring Russian aggression. According to the U.S. State Department, the NATO operation is in direct response to Russia's intervention in Ukraine. The counterintelligence head stressed that Russia's main goal is preparing for a quick attack in the Baltic region.
Russia's main priority to strengthen its capabilities towards the west and Kaliningrad region remains unchanged. They orient themselves towards speed of military reaction and deterrence. Russia would be able to start military action against Baltic states in 24 to 48 hours. The main goal of Russia's leadership are military capabilities, which would be sufficient to begin a military operation in the region without obvious prolonged preparation.
Serbian Prime Minister Aleksandar Vučić led his party to a landslide victory in Serbia's presidential election Sunday. The election of Aleksandar Vučić as president validates his national agenda of joining the European Union while maintaining close ties with Russia and China.
Vučić avoided a runoff by taking around 55% of votes. His nearest rival, opposition candidate and former rights advocate Sasha Jankovic, trailed with just over 16% of votes. Vučić will take on a largely ceremonial post at the end of May, but is expected to retain de facto power through his control of Serbia's ruling Progressive Party. The result marked a political humiliation for Serbia's beleaguered opposition parties, which say Vučić's rule is increasingly autocratic. Vučić, a former ultranationalist, is now a self-declared pro-European Union politician. Vučić made clear his change of job would not alter the former Yugoslav republic's geopolitical balance between the European Union, which Vučić wants Serbia to join, and Russia, with which Serbs share their Orthodox Christian faith and Slavic heritage. He thanked German Chancellor Angela Merkel and Russian President Vladimir Putin, both of whom he met during the election campaign. For me, it is important this election demonstrated that a large majority of Serbian citizens favor the continuation of the European path while maintaining close ties with China and Russia, Vučić told cheering supporters. 25-year-old student Luka Maksimovic, who ran as a white-suited parody of a sleazy political fraudster, came third with just over 9%, picking up the votes of Serbs disillusioned with the country's political class.
Ukraine is one step closer to receiving the next tranche of a loan from the International Monetary Fund. The IMF will consider granting Ukraine the next $1 billion loan installment today. The permanent representative of the IMF in Ukraine, Jerome Washer, says the issue will be discussed at the Board of Directors meeting. The IMF will pay particular attention to new macroeconomic indicators, which were revised to include the effect of the trade blockade against the Donbas-occupied territories. The trial of Crimea-based journalist Mykola Semena resumes today after a 2-week postponement. The judge had stopped the trial after Semena's defense requested a larger courtroom to allow for a more open process. The Radio Free Europe Radio Liberty contributor is being prosecuted for an article he wrote criticizing Russia's 2014 illegal annexation of Crimea. The case against him was opened in spring last year. Semena maintains his innocence, saying he was expressing his right to free speech. He faces up to 5 years in prison if convicted. Ukraine has been placed 84th in the Human Development Index rating according to the United Nations. The Human Development Index, consisting of 188 countries, is compiled annually and ranks development across the world.
766 million people in the world live on less than $2 a day, reports the United Nations in their 2016 Human Development Index. Researchers, ranking 188 countries by factors such as life expectancy, education levels, and income, have placed Ukraine as 84th in the list.
If we look at the Human Development Index for Ukraine, which again reflects measurement across education, health, and standards of living, we see that the Human Development Index for Ukraine is 0.743, which puts the country in the high human development category. It positions Ukraine 84th out of 188 countries. Compared to last year, Ukraine lost 3 positions in such ranking.
The Human Development Index allows researchers and policymakers a way to track the development of their country without relying on purely economic indicators. Today, a task stands before our country to continue the adaptation of those goals of sustainable development, taking into account those known details in the context of a difficult socioeconomic situation in our country. The purchasing power of Ukrainians has decreased significantly. 60% of Ukrainians are currently living below the poverty line. UN experts forecast that without reforms and economic stabilization, Ukraine's population will decrease by 4 million people by 2030.
In Ukraine, this is particularly true. There are 1.7 million internally displaced people, 2.8 million people with disabilities, and 60% live below the poverty line.
The national income for a single person has fallen for the first time in 25 years by purchasing power parity. To compare 2015 and 1990, purchasing power has fallen by 31.9%. Experts have also noted some positive improvements for Ukraine in the report as well. Life expectancy for women and men has risen, and access to higher education has expanded. Romeo Kabir, UATV.
Evening gowns instead of sportswear. A ceremony called the Heroes of the Athletic Year 2016 has been held in Kyiv. Top Ukrainian athletes, coaches, and other sports representatives attended the event and received various awards. UATV visited Ukrainian sports Oscars too.
Ukraine's top athletes and sports representatives attended the Heroes of Sports Year Awards, a kind of Oscars ceremony for Ukrainian sports. Up for grabs Best Athlete, Best Coach, and Best Team, among other awards. Ukraine's National Academy of Sport chose the winners. One of the judges, retired Olympic basketball champion Alexander Volkov. He says it was difficult to choose the best of the best. It is difficult, especially when someone participates at the World Cups or the European Championships and shows good results throughout the season. It is really difficult, especially, to be honest, when you're not a sports specialist, but just a fan. You select by your heart. The awards ceremony opened the nomination Olympic Hope of Ukraine. Biathlete Kristina Dmitrenko, champion of the Youth Olympic Games, won that gong. The People's Choice Prize was given to Olympic champion sprint canoeist Yuri Cheban and Anna Rizadinova, bronze medalist of the Rio Olympic Games in rhythmic gymnastics. For non-Olympic sports, Anna Muzychuk was recognized at the ceremony. In 2016, she won the world champion in rapid chess and blitz and the World Chess Olympiad. She says, "It's still not a competition and nothing depends on me here, but it is always very pleasant to win. And I'm very glad to receive this award. Of course, all contenders are worthy of winning. They're Olympic champions and champions of the Europe and the world. I feel comfortable in these people's presence." Anna herself is a fan of Ukrainian artist gymnast Oleg Vernyayev. In August 2016, Vernyayev won the gold medal in the parallel bars competition at the Rio Olympics, while also picking up a silver in the men's all-round competition. Meanwhile, Sportswoman of the Year was awarded to Ukrainian saber fencer and two-time medals winner of the 2016 Olympic Games, Olga Kharlan. Olga was also the winner in the category Team of the Year. It's cool. Everything is very cool. An Olympic year, Olympic statuette. This is the dearest thing that we have. We were very pleased to be chosen, because all the nominees are worthy of winning. All the guys fought and won. It is very nice that we were selected. It is very pleasant to appear with this award on stage. It is really pleasant to be at such a celebration among such people. It is pleasant to stand near Oleg, always to see him in the Olympic. We often meet, see each other, and talk. I was so pleased to see him here. All in all, the ceremony was a chance to thank the Ukrainian athletes and sports representatives who put in hours and hours of work to represent the country on the world stage.
That's the latest news from Ukraine. For more information, search our social media pages. Just type in UATV English. Goodbye.